afternoon, and welcome once again to the Alumni Special. My name is Dilly MacFarlane. I'm the Alumni Officer here at Mount St. Vincent, and in the coming weeks, I'll be bringing you interviews with interesting people who are Mount alumni or who are involved in programs here at Mount St. Vincent. Today, I'm very happy to welcome as my guest, Peggy Fraser.
Hi, Dilly.
Hi, Peggy. Now, with a name like Peggy Fraser, you've got to be a Pictou County girl.
Oh, you bet. I'm from New Glasgow originally, but Halifax is home now.
Oh, that's great. Well, we welcome you to DUET, and we welcome you to Halifax. And tell us a bit, Peggy, your specialty at present right now. You're working on a special project to promote museum studies here at Mount St. Vincent. Your background, though I understand, is in Canadian studies.
That's right. I really have a hodgepodge of background. My first degree was in Canadian studies. I've since done work in art history, museum studies, education, and I've had extensive experience in tourism and hospitality, so it's a real mishmash. Really?
What are some of the schools? I know you went to Mount A.
I went to the other Mount.
Oh, yes, right.
Mount Allison.
Right. And what other schools have you attended?
Well, I've taken courses at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and I've taken a couple of courses here at the Mount.
So one of these days you're going to be one of our Mount alumni.
I sure hope so.
Now, at present there is no major or minor available in museum studies at the Mount, but I understand that you are here right now working under a grant from the federal government, indeed from the National Museums of Canada.
That's right.
To try to develop a program in museum studies. For the most part, my understanding of the situation is that our ability as a university to offer a minor program of study in museum studies is in place, but it's pending approval from the government body that approves the programs of study of that kind. Now, how do we tie in this effort that you're involved in right now with DUET? I know that there's an interesting connection there that our viewers would be interested in hearing about.
Well, what has happened is that the Mount has a minor program approved and all ready to go, but there was concern from the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission that people who took that minor would not be able to find jobs in the Atlantic provinces. And of course, nowadays with budget concerns, that's a major consideration.
Yes.
What we found on further consideration was that our market really are the people who are already working in museums and who are looking for professional development, upgrading of their skills.
And
now, the reason that DUET comes in is that most of those people are working in small institutions. They are scattered throughout the Atlantic provinces. Like most people working in nonprofit institutions these days, they're very short on budget and time and staff, and they just can't get into a university campus to take courses. So that we're following in the steps of all the other DUET programs and looking at distance education to take the courses to them.
I think that's a marvelous notion. In fact, I can see that this program will in fact fit into a long-range development program for the province in the area of tourism and hospitality. I'm thinking there's, just as a very isolated incident, I'm thinking of a place that I'm very fond of visiting in the summer and have been visiting there for many years, Parsboro, Nova Scotia. They have a wonderful museum there in the Ottawa House.
Yeah.
And I know that they're, the current operators of the museum are very much interested in upgrading their own professional skills, as you mentioned. Now, with having to be on premises in Parsboro, it would be very difficult for them to develop their own skills as far as presenting things to the public and, in fact, developing what could be a real network of fine museums throughout the province. Some of the questions that come to mind when I think of museum studies, it's an unusual field, really. And
well, it's a new field. It hasn't been in existence that long. It used to be that someone would study history or natural history or any one of an number of academic disciplines and would go to work in a museum. But within the last couple of decades, there's been a growth of a whole new body of knowledge centered on the museum, on how to take care of the collections that you have, from basically keeping track of them to very sophisticated conservation procedures. then there are also all the questions of presenting, as you mentioned. Exhibiting has become a very specialized.
And I think that, that
lots
people,
of different specialties.
Just from my own experience as a little girl, museums have changed drastically, of course, and now it's almost, most recently I was visiting the Royal Ontario Museum, and the one thing that impressed me, I hadn't been inside that building in 20 years, and the one thing that impressed me was that I was no longer the little kid with her nose pressed against the window. I was in the middle of this wonderful happening. There were hands-on exhibits that you could be a part of, that you could contribute to and participate in that way. And then, of course, there were the more traditional things where you would actually view artifacts and things like this. But museum studies is becoming, I suppose, a part of a changing concept of the museum with the public.
Well, museums have been really influenced in the last number of years, probably since the turn of the century, by all the other factors that are influencing our lives. You know, the growth of things like department stores had an enormous effect on the way museums exhibited. Changing communications, the way we spend our time, we've got more leisure time, we're looking for more interesting things to do. All of those have affected museums. And I've always found museums to be exciting places, but I think now they are even more so. And I think they're that way to a lot more people. They're certainly trying very hard to be.
Now, I was discussing with you a little bit earlier when we were talking about the Museum Studies program here at the Mount. Ideally now, with a program, a full program in Museum Studies, you had mentioned that it would be possible to plug into some existing course programming. The courses that that would be helpful to a person who was majoring in museum studies, like the business courses that might be beneficial or whatever.
Well, the Mount really has an ideal preparation for our museum studies program. We've got a PR, a public relations program. We've got business administration. We have, I think, any number of things that would tie in very nicely with the education. And I know there's some interest in the education department in using museums for new learning situations. So there's a lot of enthusiasm, and I think that the Mount would just be an ideal spot in which we can bring all of that together and add the specialties that are particularly appropriate to museums and put together a really interesting program and worthwhile, one that's much needed in the Atlantic provinces.
Now, Peggy, what are you doing right now? You're working, how long is your term of employment to begin with this grant?
Well, we're funded by National Museums of Canada, who originally gave us a 6-month grant. Then they gave us an additional 10 months.
Great. Good.
And what we've been doing in the last few months is developing one part of one course, which has already been approved, which is going to be tested by museum workers in the Atlantic provinces. And we're really doing a feasibility study to see if this is going to work.
How many are participating in the study? How many museums?
Oh, we're using a very small number this time around, probably about 10. But last year we did a major market survey, and we mailed out over 2,600 surveys. There are...
in this area?
Oh, there are, I believe, over 500 museums and historical societies in the Atlantic provinces.
Really? That is interesting.
It's amazing. Every single little town has an historical society and a wide group of volunteers. It's a major...
Well, now, you started with a major market survey just to see what the interest level would be, and now you're fine-tuning it down to the focus is on 10 particular institutions. Is that...
No, our focus is on about 40 to 50 institutions throughout the Atlantic provinces. We have asked 10 people within those institutions to do an in-depth critique of what we've been doing, and we'll be using their responses to fine-tune our product.
Now, what you're looking at now is to present a course in museum studies that would include all of those disciplines that we discussed earlier. Just refresh my memory. Some of the things that the course would include, the areas of interest.
Well, ideally, we'd be offering courses in each of those areas, which would be exhibition, care of collections, museum management, conservation, a lot of different areas like that. The course we're working on now, though, is focusing on exhibition and evaluation.
I see. Peggy, I imagine that you have been through a good many museums in your day. Can you recommend it, without playing two favorites to too great an extent, What's your favorite museum in the Halifax-Dartmouth area?
In Halifax-Dartmouth, I'm really fond of Cole Harbour Historical Society Village, and I've got the name wrong. It's long, but it's Cole Harbour Village out in Cole Harbour subdivision, and it's a wonderful farm in the midst of a very highly developed subdivision. It's just, you know, up the hill from a couple of gas stations.
It comes on you as quite a surprise. I remember driving by
have
there
you been there?
with the children. The children pointed it out to me, in fact. I drove right by it, and you were sort of aware that there was something going on, but didn't quite read it. But it truly is right in the middle of the subdivision.
It's a 19th century, very small farmhouse with all of the outbuildings, and in the spring they have the animals, and you can go in and talk to the baby goats and the chickens and the cows and so on. And all through the summer they have a farmer's market, and they have special activities going on all the time, and I really enjoy it.
And it's presented in an historical context. I understand that this area was originally a farm property that...
That's right. And it's actually, the other thing I like about it is it's an interesting idea. It's run entirely by volunteers. They do get advice and financial assistance from the Nova Scotia Museum Complex, as so many of the small museums in Nova Scotia do. But the impetus for the society came about through the preservation of the ecosystem in Cole Harbour.
Really?
And it has evolved into a number of different activities, including the farm, and it's just a wonderful place to be.
Well, that's marvelous, because it gives you a different perspective on museums, not as an academic, dry, dusty, preservative nature, but this is a community activity, a growing, continuing...
And it's very, very active.
Well, I can see why that's one of your favorites.
Yeah.
Well, along the more traditional lines, are there any museums that you could recommend in the Halifax-Dartmouth area that are doing something unusual now or something unique?
Well, I think in traditional lines, my favorite is still the Nova Scotia Museum Complex. I know there are a lot of people who haven't been to the building on Summer Street, and it's well worth the visit. They've got wonderful permanent exhibits, but they also have changing temporary exhibits every couple of months. And they have really interesting things there. Do you remember when the Central Trust Tower was being built?
Yes.
They found a lot of artifacts from the 18th century, from the very founding of Halifax. And those were whipped up into a very quick but wonderful exhibit that was on display at the Nova Scotia Museum for a while after the excavation was done. And it's that kind of response to the interests of the community. They've just finished, I believe, an exhibit on the 100th anniversary of Girl Guiding.
Oh, yes.
And they had all kinds of pictures and artifacts from campfire trips and all sorts of things.
Well, that would certainly take you down memory lane, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I never got to Girl Guides. I was a brownie.
I was a brownie, too, and I did get to Girl Guides, but I didn't get very far, that's for sure. Peggy, now what's in store with this program? What will happen after the federal grant is finished?
It's really difficult for me to say because I'm not a decision maker. It will depend on how Mount St. Vincent views a museum studies program in terms of their future directions and plans. It also depends on the provincial, regional, and national bodies on how important they feel it is to support. Educational programs are expensive.
Yes. Well, now, in the meantime, we can look forward to, at least at present, seeing some museum studies information going out to our small museums across throughout the province, really, and in the Atlantic area.
Yes, there'll be information going out, but people who watch ASN will have a chance to see it as well, because on the 5th and the 12th of February, we are going to be broadcasting 2 videotapes that we produced just before Christmas on the subject of exhibitions, and I think anyone who is interested in heritage and the preservation of culture throughout the Atlantic provinces would really enjoy them.
Peggy, I want to thank you very much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Dilly.
It's been very interesting talking with you. And I'm going to invite our viewers now for further information on museum studies and DUET and any of our alumni programming here at the Mount. Please give us a call here at Mount St. Vincent University, and I look forward to seeing you again next week here on the Alumni Special.